The Quran actually talks about evolution. The Quran talks about they are not teaching. They were actually making mistakes, and there's nothing to do with faith. It could be with a particular ideology.
So that was nothing to do with religion.
It's nothing to do with religion. It was to do with completely erroneous idea about religion.
Well, I would say,
Stephen. You would say it in a minute, if you don't mind.
A minor point on Teflon coating religion, as it were. I mean, you need to be very careful about saying, oh, this is the real religion, and that's not really religion at all. I mean, atheists are guilty of the same thing. Christopher Hitchens once suggested that Stalin and Mao weren't really atheists. They were religious. And why did he say that? Because he wanted to Teflon coat the atheism. It's a dubious intellectual strategy to say these people aren't really religious.
No, but if they made a mistake, that's a mistake, and they should be actually sanctioned for that mistake. Sanctioned, is that the right word? Whatever the
That'll
word
do.
Can I say something about the way in which...
Sorry, you're going to come back. In 1 second, you're going to come back.
well, I forgot what I was about.
We were on the King Fahd School in Acton, and where it can go so
I
badly
remember now
wrong.
what I was going to talk about, and was... Hold on, let me make a point. I haven't spoken for quite a while. The point is that while she says that Quran doesn't say that, Quran doesn't say this, the point is that there are quite a lot of people who have in fact left Islam, and they do cite verses from the Quran. They cite certain hadiths and say that there's something wrong with them, and they cite that there's a problem with an ethical and moral code that is already here and very much helpful to people. Although most of us say that, of course, again, like the same point with curiosity, we say, well, religion teaches you about ethics as well. So why don't we pursue ethics for just ethics' sake, rather than use religion to pursue ethics?
It's just to clarify a point, but it's very illustrative of people having half a handle on something. So you mentioned there about the school in Acton and saying that they were anti-Semitic because they mentioned about this thing that connecting Jews with pigs. Actually, that comes from Jewish teaching because it's referring to a group of the Jews who went against the Sabbath.
But we're talking about 5-year-old children.
Yeah.
We're talking about 5-year-old children. Anthony.
No, but you didn't listen to...
Anthony.
Can I talk about
Anthony?
5-year-old...
Wait, Anthony.
Yes, thank you. You didn't listen to the end of what I was saying, Nicky. So you cut me off. So there is a lesson, because the lesson about it was about people who disobeyed the Sabbath. So they were taking. So it wasn't about Jews in particular. It was about a group, and it was a knowledge that was passed down from the Jews to the Muslims.
I'd like to talk about 5 years.
Andrew, do you want to?
I just think that's. I mean, I think that whatever it was about, it's not a good thing to say, right?
It's not. It's one school that made a mistake.
Well, I'm not saying that it's more than one school, but I think that everyone has to accept that you can't, as you have been doing, talk about religion as if it's only the good bits of religion, or religious schools as if it's only the good bits of religious schools.
No, we're talking about religion. Human beings make mistakes. And actually in secular schools, the kids are being indoctrinated in all sorts of things.
Well, I don't
and they're not actually, and they are also getting a Disney-fied view of religion.
Okay. In secular schools, in secular schools, kids are being indoctrinated into all sorts of things.
What's the antithesis of religion? Let's frame this. Let's reframe it. What do we want children, 5-year-olds, as you said, to grow up on? Porn? Violence, drugs, hedonism, it's all there, it's all open. Is that what you want to grow up on?
Rabbi Jonathan Romain.
Thank you.
Secular schools, are they teaching children porn?
At the age of 5.
We can carry on forever lobbing statistics or anecdotes. The real hard fact is that faith schools in the country are the only schools that are allowed to discriminate in terms of admission of pupils and employment of teachers. In terms of the curriculum. And that's really not healthy to have discrimination as part of the religious system. And I think, to be honest...
What about the moral backbone? What about the moral backbone of children? What about those basic things? Even if you don't... I mean, you believe it comes from God, but even if you, Anthony, or you, Stephen, don't believe that these principles come from God, it's not a bad thing to teach children, thou shalt not lie, thou shalt not steal.
It would be lovely, Nicky, if they did teach a good moral backbone. But our experience, we sent a child to a local school. We scouted out to try and find a school that could actually teach things other than religion that could actually encompass the values I hold dear, learning, and actually showing a community spirit that isn't just based on one religion. We found a school, so we thought, but eventually they struggled so hard to fit us into their Christian-focused system that they ended up sending us to Coventry.
Interesting, you sent to a Christian school.
All schools in this country are Christian by virtue of the law that says there has to be an act of religious worship on a daily basis.
Okay, Mark.
Christianity has acted as a glue to give us a cultural identity in this land, a tolerance which welcomes people of other religions and other backgrounds.
Extraordinarily intolerant
and a moral framework which we are departing from. Hence, you get the London riots. You've got lack of respect for parents. You've got you've got truancy in schools because people don't respect their parents.
Well, the London riots, as a result, partly of the lack of the moral framework, which came from the lack of religion, the dearth of religion.
Away a dearth of religion. If you have Christianity, it embeds true morals into people. It gives a cohesiveness to our culture.
There are centuries of violence to speak against that argument. I mean,
Stephen's a historian on this. Stephen, the lack of morality.
Sorry, carry on.
Whatever. Yeah. The lack of morality that some people perceive in our society. Is it due to the disintegration of our basic moral framework, which is because of the losing our religion?
Right.
Is it?
No, it's not. If you look across the developed democracies, you find that those that are most religious often have the biggest problems in terms of crime, in terms of sexually transmitted disease.
Proof.
Go, look it up. It is a fact. No, it's just a fact, which is very inconvenient for those.
You're accepting.
Secondly, and this is the more important point, if you, well, here's a source for you. Look at a book called The Altruistic Personality, written by Pearl and Samuel Oyner, who looked into the backgrounds of those who rescued Jews during the Holocaust. Religious people will often say, oh, it was religion that motivated them, it was religion that marked them out as special. It was not. What marks out the rescuers from the non-rescuers is that they've been raised in a non-authoritarian way. They have been raised to think and question rather than passively accept it. When you get philosophy, you can encourage people to think in these kind of ways, to think and question inside religious schools, and that's fine, or outside religious schools. I'm not too bothered about whether it's done in a religious setting or not, but as long as it is done. It's very important that children are encouraged to think and question, because we need to...
Sorry, Jenny, that happens, doesn't it, in faith schools?
Can I just say, without faith schools, without specifically Christian schools, there wouldn't be schools at all in this country. My own school was founded by monks in the 16th century. And let me tell you about the Muslim schools in Kenya. Because they're not preparing children for the modern world, they're actually asking Christians to come in and do the teaching.
In what ways are they not preparing children for the modern world?
They're teaching them about a medievalist way of life, which is the orientation of Islam. You go back to the Golden Age. It's all about going back to Muhammad. It's it really is truly a religious system that's not actually preparing you for this world, it's preparing you for the life afterwards.
I'll get your story in a minute, Nick, so get ready. Yeah, you've had your hand up for ages. I'll try and get round some audience.
I think it's really important to distinguish between faith schools and teaching religion in schools, because you can teach religion in schools without sort of propagating sort of a belief system. So you can lay out all the different religions and talk about it in a more philosophical way. Whereas faith schools, it's the outside of the lesson parts that can alienate some children who don't perhaps adopt that faith.
And up here, I think that. Good morning.
Morning. Yeah, I think there's a couple of different points here. There's what we want from a child's education, what we want the end product to be for a child, which I think a lot of religions share those values, and they're not exclusive to religion by any means. It's love, it's compassion, it's understanding, it's inquiry. The issue then is the mechanisms that are used to teach those tools to the children. I think a lot of parents in the UK are kind of religious with a small r, so they're very conflicted about the ways to teach these sets of things like understanding and love. And so they may use religion, but then with religion comes various truth claims and various facts that then have to be disseminated as well to the child. So then there's a conflict between all these great feelings and attributes you want to teach your children, but hold on a sec, with that comes this set of beliefs as well. And then you get into things like truth claims about the age of the earth, you know, self-pity, being born straight into sin, and all that's really then destructive for the child and for adults in general as well.
Thank you. Gentlemen up here.
Why can't we adopt that to have schools that teach about all faiths?
Rabbi, we've got
and
gentlemen back
respect
here.
all religions.
Back of the class. Right. Hi.
I'd like to question the question in a couple of ways. One is, what on earth do we mean by religion? Most of the other kind of naturalists here seem to be assuming a kind of traditionalist concept of religion, but actually, in an evolutionary timescale, the earliest incontrovertible evidence for religion is 65,000 years ago. Most evolutionary anthropologists think probably 200,000 years ago. All of what we're talking about as religion here is relatively recent.
In terms of a day, it's 3 seconds to midnight. You know, that's basically it,
we need
isn't
a
it?
much more naturalistic, functional concept of what religion is.
Nick, your story. You were at a religious school, and then you came out as what at the end?
An atheist.
An atheist,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
I went through Catholic education from primary school to sixth form, and I was the head boy at the secondary school and the sixth form. And the final ceremonies, if you will, at the end of sixth form, during my speech, I said to them I was an atheist. I felt it was right to say that.
Out of nowhere? It was your...
Well, it's within the speech. It was just a small section of the speech, but I mean...
What was the reaction?
Well, mostly positive, you know. The Monsignor of our area was there, and he was actually leading the Mass, which he stepped down from the bishop. And he put his hand on my shoulder and said, "You're a brave man."
Really?
But then he was like, but then obviously I get
there's a caveat, as they say in Latin.
Yeah, obviously from religious teachers in the school and also from the Monsignor, they were like, you're a silly boy, but you're a brave boy.
But that shows that actually, despite primary and secondary of a Catholic, you actually were able to make up your mind.
Yeah.
So you will take with you that knowledge, that morality, and it'll be with you for the rest of your life, and you made up your mind.
Whether or not the morality stems from religion is a different matter.
I'll say what you're saying, Nick.
Whether or not morality stems from religion is a different matter, though. Because you're linking morality
Did you
with
learn
religion.
anything from? Can you be quiet, please? Did you learn anything from the moral teaching that you got at school through a Catholic prism with an M?
Well,
Did you learn
I think
anything
the moralities more stem from the parent upbringing than the school. I think it's the job of the parents to deliver that rather than the school. The school
Schools can't function if they don't do that.
He may have been a brave boy. Whether or not it was the right thing to do at the school leaving ceremony as head boy to say something which you know,
I kind of like your style.
There's another point I'd like to make.
You like your style too, don't you?
Absolutely. I think that's what religion does. Religion gives you that freedom and that courage.
But there's one other point, and the more important point. He's also, dare I say it, a young man, and it may well be the case, as I am sure it is the case with many, many people who have a religious education, and then when they reach your age, like I did, they break away from it, and they take them a very, very long time to find their path back to it, but eventually they are grateful for having received a religious education because it has given them, as it were, a moral compass and a spiritual wherewithal to navigate very choppy waters that as a young man you haven't even begun to dip your toe in.
Then how do you suppose I decided that I was an atheist to begin with?
You've obviously come to the view that how you're able to, I don't know. I mean, it seems to me actually how you're able to know that there's no God is actually a difficult position.
Anthony.
I think it's a very comfortable notion that people will always come back to the religion later on. I think at the time, though, when children are at school, there are real and present dangers in certain schools that have very fixed beliefs. For example, a child growing up in a religious school that doesn't teach about homosexuality, and there are many of them. A child... Well, teach the... OK, you're absolutely right.
Well, there was a riot this week. Let's address the riot. Last week, the last couple of weeks, there's been this riot with the Catholic...
Education Service,
we had a petition amongst school children against gay marriage.
Yeah, there were
the government stepped in, they're looking at it.
That's right, there were some students in one Catholic school who were extremely angry and distressed and well, a whole raft of negative reactions, to something the Catholic Education Service did, which was to send round to all state-funded Catholic schools, pointing out statements by archbishops about gay marriage and encouraging students to sign a petition against the recognition of civil same-sex marriage. And one of the things that teachers were presenting at this school was that these things were unnatural, that the Catholic belief was against them. And many of the students, you're right, that the story last week was that they were quite distressed by this. And I think that is the sort of risk that religious schools do create. There are people within a school who are going to be...
particularly around sexual ethics, is a real test for, because religious frameworks always have views about it. And I think a school with a religious foundation, has a real issue there about how they deal with those things. If I talk about Church of England schools are not faith schools. Church of England schools have inclusive admissions. By and large, there are some exceptions, but by and large, schools that were started for the...
That's really not true.
That is true.
You just put your name to a report last week, which said that all children at Church of England schools should have a personal encounter with the person of Jesus Christ. That was your name, Jan Ainsworth.
Look at the wording.
And I think the real point is that we want schools that are all inclusive.
With the Christian faith.
A meaningful encounter
with the Christian faith.
With Jesus Christ, you said.
Which means your religious education should take faith seriously. It should enable every child, whatever background they come from.
Then why did you specify Jesus Christ? Why didn't
because
we talk about
that's at the heart
faith?
of the Christian religion.
Yes, but we're talking about state-funded schools, which should be in education, not indoctrination.
That's not the whole of it, but at the very least, amongst all of the religious education, and all religious education should take all faiths seriously. But because a Church of England school, has a Christian foundation, at the very least, it should do a good job on enabling children to engage with the Christian faith. That's what we're after, not making them become Christians. The school in the parish where I live, 85% of the children come from Muslim families. It's just as much an obligation for those children to understand something about the Christian faith as it is for children from Christian families to understand other faiths. That's what good religious education is. It doesn't matter about admissions. It doesn't matter about who goes. Every child should be able to have that serious encounter with faith.
Jenny, I just want to move it on to a last thought that we can have. Can I move it on to this last thought in our last section, if I can call it that, which is basically, if the demise of religion continues, the decline in belief carries on, what are the consequences for the people who are children now and for our society in 40 years' time?
Yes, I think they're very serious indeed. Because yes, I do. And I think that we've witnessed it. I mean, I live in a part of London where I came back from a retreat on the island of Iona to find headlines the Monday morning of buildings in flame. I thought, oh, that's Syria, and I put it to one side. Then I discovered it was on 3 sides of where I live, riots and a burning of buildings in Enfield, Wood Green and Tottenham. And I think that what this manifested was a lack of the boundaries being given to kids from a very early age to provide a structure and a way for them to formulate their sense of themselves. And I believe that at least the religious underpinning of an education will affirm you as a child. It will provide boundaries with which you can defend yourself against authority, against the state, against bad parents, and it will also protect you from, for example, rampant sexuality, which is being taught in schools. Half of knife crime in a survey in America. Half of knife crime.
Which schools? Hang on, can I wind you back to?
Let me just finish this,
which schools teaching rampant sexuality?
There's a tie-up between knife crime and protecting your right to your woman. There is a sexual tie-up between violence and what we're seeing on our streets. The research shows it in America. And so what I'm saying is, I emerged from a faith, from an Anglican school without a faith. Nonetheless, what I remembered for the rest of my life is my headmistress, an authority figure, kneeling in prayer every morning to a higher authority. I still carry that image within me today.
It's a good feeling, is it?
Certainly, yes, because she wasn't the sort of Oberführer, if you like. She wasn't, the oppressive authority figure. There was something above her to which she was accountable and to which I also had access.
Well, who wants to...
There's a lot of claims there, and I don't think that they're really...
Stephen, you're on this, aren't you? I saw you move forward in your seat.
Yes. It's often said, isn't it, that without religion we're going to go to hell in a handbasket. If not now, then next week or next year or next... whatever it is. It's always just ahead, because clearly we haven't gone yet, but it's coming, isn't it? Is there any evidence to support that view? I can't see that there is very much good evidence. Let's finish. What we have is we have often two things happening at the same time. So you find religious belief declining, and then criminality goes up, and then people go, oh look, one is the cause of the other, and that's a classic example of the post hoc fallacy.
But if children don't know the difference between right and wrong,
of course children should be taught about right and wrong.
And a good way to do that is through the...
Well, it's not necessarily the best, as I've been explaining, that one of the most important things to do is to get them to think and question. Of course you should teach them about morality. You can do that within a religious setting, you can do it within a non... But you should be, then we should be doing that.
Mark Mullins. Yeah, well, we've got to work out what morality, because the morality that is the true morality is a morality that protects someone from sexual exploitation, the Bible teaches sex in marriage between a man and a woman. If our society stuck to that, just think of all the problems we would not have. And the good things we would have. And that is a Christian morality which we're saying we can't even teach in our schools.
Well, let's get a response. Let's get a response.
Here's a very good moral rule. The golden rule, do as you would be done by.
Yeah. Okay? Love your neighbour as yourself.
Yes, yeah. Now who came up with that?
Christ.
No, it's Confucius. Before Jesus. Confucius, earlier, a secular society in which the morality was rooted not in Christianity, not even within religion, but it was a rational, secular doctrine. They had the same moral morality for thousands of years, more or less the same levels of morality as the system. It's simply not true.
We have a problem with reducing morality to sexuality. Morality is not about sexuality. Morality is about actually being able to question what is it to do right? What is it to do right in a certain situation? It is a philosophical morality. And yes, it could have come from Confucius, from Plato, but actually religion has encapsulated it. The different faiths have done so over millennia. So to actually exclude them would exclude a framework that allows a compass, that allows us to start posing these questions.
Sorry, Jonathan.
I'm seeing a good example of this right now, because as we've got the economic recession and social services are being withdrawn, who is coming to pick up the tab? It's a lot of the religious groups who are doing the soup kitchens for the homeless and the fragmented youth. And actually, although I certainly would agree with the humanists that religious and humanists share an awful lot of values, so I don't want to claim exclusivity, but there is one crucial difference. A secularist will say, I think it's a good idea to be good. It's a personal whim. Whereas a religious person will say, thou shalt be good. There's a moral imperative.
It'd be good if it was followed.
That encapsulates how insulting non-religious people often find the way that religious people phrase their views about their morality. I don't think let's be good just because arbitrarily on a whim I've decided it makes me feel good to be good. I feel good. I try to do good because I feel a sense of obligation to my fellow human beings. I feel good-hearted. It's not just because I've arbitrarily decided to do something which, if I had the luxury of a commandment, I'd be able to know.
Andrew, currently, if you look at charity, all the people give a lot of charity, but you have all these big programs making people feel good about themselves because they've done charity.
Telethons and stuff.
But if you actually look at religion, people, you give with your right hand what your left hand doesn't know what you've given. It's a different kind of imperative for morality.
Sorry.
And it's one that is deeper and more rational than actually self.
I'm sorry, that's not true.
Andrew Copson.
That's not true, and it's untrue in two ways.
Well, Andrew, respond.
It's untrue in two ways. Firstly, it's not just about feeling good, as I said. It's about the obligations that we owe to each other. Locating morality within human beings generally doesn't mean that I can arbitrarily, selfishly make up my own values. It means that we earth it in human beings. I'm sorry, you can't tell me that it does. I am saying this is the way I govern my morality and the way that millions of people in this country govern their morality. Not arbitrarily, but according to our obligations to other people. And the second way in which it's untrue is to say somehow, as Jonathan also implied, that religious people do more for charity. We know from numerous studies like the Citizenship Survey just a few years ago that the same percentage of people are volunteering and engaging in their community from non-religious backgrounds as from religious backgrounds. So although you may like it to be true that religious people are more serving other people than non-religious people, it's not true, unfortunately.
Schools are teaching arbitrariness, arbitrary values. I interviewed young girls for my book on chastity. The first person that I interviewed, it's not funny actually, this is a really serious subject. The first person I interviewed was told, you can have sex when it feels right to do so. So she did. And so her life has been changed from that moment onwards, and she regretted it deeply. This is secular values. They are arbitrary.
But some religious people have sex before they're married, don't they?
And
the whole repressed guilt and repressed sexuality. And
they've got a framework to grow into. But if you're just taught that actually nothing matters, you've got nothing to grow into.
This isn't true. I'd like to say something about this freedom and acceptance. Actually, I'm part of two forums, one on Facebook that is called Pakistani Atheists and Agnostics, and also the Council of Ex-Muslim Britain. If there was such an acceptance of such people, and a lot of them are in fact very concerned about social issues, about political issues, and at the same time they're very aspiring individuals. Quite a lot of them study sciences and mathematics. They're also good people. Why is it that they actually need a different forum to talk about things, and when they can in fact get such acceptance in a more religious sphere?
Actually, they are accepted, and I'm part of a forum for Muslim for Secular Democracy. But that science and math you are studying came to us here because of the Muslim scholars over the years who then transmitted the Indian work and before that the Greek work. So religion has given us the human knowledge we have now. So it might be that some people are prejudiced and that it might be some people are negative, but there's actually a few people. People are actually talking to each other and supporting each other. At the end of the day, all religions, all faith, give the individual the right to choose, because otherwise we're not accountable.
Well,
we believe
at
in
their
heaven
best they do, but you must acknowledge that at their worst they absolutely don't. You must acknowledge that.
There must be actually some
It's
parents.
not a case of there might
How
be.
many parents say to their kids, you have to eat your greens or else? At the end of the day, parents might actually not give kids choice in some things, but in a pure form, religion wants people to choose, because otherwise, how could you be accountable
But this is
for
not
your
the
actions?
experience that so many people have.
I'm sorry, but I have in fact met quite a few Muslims who have said very homophobic things, who've said very anti-Semitic things. And if you do talk about, them being ethical or being guided very well, then how do you explain all these failures? Because quite a few people, even I've seen within London, in various cities, who smoke, who've had sex, but they say they don't want to eat pork or some other thing. But how do you explain all this behavior then?
That's not morality. Morality is bigger than personal behavior in terms of what you're eating and who you're having sex with. Morality is bigger. If the question is about society, then we want to look at the frameworks that allow us to engage with big ideas about morality. And these frameworks so far have been religious ones. Secular frameworks, so far we have not had an ideology that allows a secular engagement unless it's philosophy. If we are teaching kids philosophy, then maybe that's the way forward again.
Thank you all very much indeed. Give yourselves a huge round of applause. Great contributions. Debates between one for the next week in London. Goodbye from everyone here in Bristol. Thank you for watching.